Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Super Castlevania IV, brought to us by Konami. Super Castlevania IV holds a few distinctions for me. Not only is it probably one of my absolute favorite Super Nintendo games, it's also one of my favorite Castlevania games to ever be released. For its time, the graphics and music are some of the absolute best we had ever seen at gaming, and it still holds up to this day as one of the absolute most beautiful games to look at on the SNES. The storyline for Castlevania IV is actually a remake of the original Castlevania, chronicling Simon Belmont's first attempt to destroy Dracula. From just a few moments after the Konami screen, this game already begins to shine. After our story introduction, we start off at the title screen, and like many of the other Castlevania games, you can actually enter a name as you begin the game. As the game begins, Simon Belmont stands outside the gates of the fog-ridden castle, Castlevania. As we begin the game, check out the background. You can see a large skull in the background, and even bats emit from the eyes. Just one of the many awesome effects you're going to be seeing throughout the entire game. Now, like most Castlevanias, you start off with a few candles to whip yourself some power-ups, as well as get your first sub-weapon, which in this case is a knife. One of my favorite things to do in the game from the very beginning is just mess around on the drawbridge for a few seconds, seeing how long I can stay on it before being knocked into the actual castle. As the game begins now, with Simon Belmont's theme playing in the background, you can just tell that this game is going to be epic. Of all the Castlevania games, I still feel that this one is the best controlling. With Simon, not only do you have great movement, you also have full control of your whip, being able to whip in many different directions, as well as just being able to hold the whip out there for a few seconds to take out some enemies that may be close by or just below you. Now that feature was seen in later Castlevania games, but we've never really seen the control of the whip as well in other games as we do in this one. Our first few enemies that we deal with are just some skeletons as well as bats. However, here we start to see some more familiar enemies, including the dragon skulls. Just have your whip hang down this platform and you can take out that one before you even have to go down. Be careful over here though, because I usually take my first hit about here by an accidental bat hitting me, or from the bone from that skeleton. Here we have one of the first cool game mechanics in the game. We have these bat hooks, that when you swing at them, your whip hooks onto them and it allows you to swing across gaps. You can actually shorten or lengthen your whip so that you can jump shorter or farther away from the hook. There's going to be a lot of these, and they'll of course get harder as we continue through the game. Another cool thing about the game is that you can jump in midair and land on staircases. This will allow you to attack enemies coming from above you as you end up landing on the stairs and climb up. Be careful as you enter the next screen. When you go inside the building, you're going to see these creatures on the ceiling. Just be sure to stop just underneath of them and get prepared to whip upwards as they fall down so they don't end up landing on you. Over here we see the first of these horse-head type enemies. They stay on the platform that they're connected to, and then when you get close they start flying towards you. Thankfully, with some holy water, we're able to take out a lot of them pretty easily, and then we only have to really deal with the one that's hanging on the top portion, which we will have to fight again as we get up on top. You can either take him out, or just run past him and get up to the stairs on the left side. Here we have the first of the Medusa Heads in the game. These tricky enemies are in a lot of Castlevania games and have caused many headaches over the years. Thankfully though, as we start off, they're not too bad as there's only going to be one coming at you very slowly. Just be careful though with those Medusa Heads that you don't end up getting hit and fall back on the loose planks so that it ends up flipping on you when you land on it and causing you to fall through and lose a life. As we head down here, it's time for the first boss battle of the game. Head over to the right, being sure not to fall down the planks, and then get prepared. The Skeleton Knight will come at you, start immediately whipping at the head of the skeleton, and it'll take a few hits to take out that portion, and the skeleton will eventually get off and start attacking you that way. Either use holy water or keep attacking him. When he has 1 health left, he'll explode apart, coming back together and just deliver that last hit to take him out. As long as you have a full upgraded whip, you can completely keep your distance, and you should be able to keep that space between you guys big enough so he'll never actually get close enough to really do any damage. Between each of the levels, you come out to a stage map where it draws you your path and how you're actually going to be traveling along to the next level. You can see in stage number 2, though, there's actually a boss battle represented by the bat about midway through. So you actually have a boss battle and then continue on in the level a little bit farther. As the level begins, watch out for the hands that pop out of the ground and try to grab you. While they don't hurt you, they freeze you in place so that the spider that shoots projectiles or the big leaf monster can actually hit you. As you drop down here, these small orange enemies roll around on the platform that they're stationed on. So just stand on an opposite platform right below them or right next to them and take them out before jumping to that next platform. Over here, you can grab an extra piece of health if your health has been depleted a little bit so far at the beginning of the level. When you get up here, be sure to jump over the pit so you don't end up losing a life there and falling into the spikes. Here, instead of the hands popping out, we now have some zombie enemies that come out of the ground as well. Jump over the orange enemy or take him out on the ground and get over to the right to get to the next section. In the next section, we have some vultures that pop out of the background that come towards you. These enemies fly in a little bit of an erratic pattern, so you have to get used to how their movements are, and it's best to try to take them out as soon as you see them. You also have some normal bat-type enemies, as well as you have to deal with falling into the water.
When you fall into the green swamp-like purple water, you end up getting sucked down like quicksand, and if you don't jump out quick enough, you'll end up falling through and lose a life. Down here, take out the orange enemy and skeleton and break open the right wall to grab yourself a full health replenishment if you need it. Here I like to use my cross in order to take out the vulture that's just a little bit farther in front of me that I couldn't quite reach with my whip. I also like to do the same and keep the cross while I'm going across this bridge section. After this last orange enemy, we fall off to the right, and now it's time for our boss battle of the stage against Medusa. Stay on the left side and use your cross and whip it at her in order to do a lot of damage. Sometimes if you stand far enough away, she actually won't even move towards you, and you can just keep throwing up the crosses. If you do need to get close to her, or she starts coming towards you as well, duck down to get under her projectiles so you don't get turned into stone, and just keep swiping at her to destroy the little snakes she drops, as well as doing damage to her. It won't take too long to knock her down, and you move on to the next part of level 2. This part you have to be really careful on, as the waves will actually move you forward and backwards as they change direction randomly throughout the stage. The key here though is make sure you don't accidentally jump into the orange spikes that are lining the walls. If you run into them, just like any other spike, it's an instant death. The second section of the water begins with a dragon bone statue that you have to take out, but other than that, there really isn't any difference. Just continue moving along slowly, letting the water carry you, and just be careful that you don't accidentally run into any enemies. There's no spikes to deal with on the second screen, so it's much easier to contend with. Once you reach the end of this screen, we move back to the map and move on to level 3. Stage number 3 begins in a series of cave passages. It also happens to have one of my favorite songs in the game. These rockmen are a common enemy throughout this area. When you hit them, they end up breaking apart into smaller rockmen, and do that several times before finally actually dying. Overall, just be very careful while jumping over the spike pits, and for the most part you really don't have to deal with too much in this first area. If you go over to the left here, you can end up finding one of the secret areas of the game, which has a large amount of candles so you can pick up some items. I will show the other 2 secret areas that are later on in the game, because they're a lot more interesting to look at than that one. Be careful here and run across quickly so you don't have any of the rocks falling from the ceiling land on you. You also have to be careful that when they break apart, the extra little piece that comes off as well can hurt you like it just did there for me. The second area of the level has us climbing up a very large waterfall rock formation. Run quickly across the bridge as it will fall apart as you begin to walk over it. Then begin climbing your way up. There are a few branching paths here, but only one correct path, and the other ones just lead to dead ends. Up here, take out the enemy, and then use your whip to swing across using the hook. This is another great example of just how great the graphics and layers are used in this title. As you can see, the water is actually in the forefront of some areas and will actually cover the character and enemies as you move across certain platforms. Be careful once again while using the hooks in order to get over, and wait for this creature to move around to the opposite side so that you can jump on the platform and get over before it ends up coming around again and hitting you.